Fiona Kendall, and I'm a mission co-worker based in Rome in Italy, where I am seconded to the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy. Back in 2013, the Federation began a new programme for refugees and migrants called Mediterranean Hope, and it's specifically that project which I'm working with here in Italy. Mediterranean Hope is a fantastic project with a small but very committed group of people who are working creatively to support migrants and refugees in whatever way they can. The project began at a time when many migrants were attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea from North Africa into Europe and landing on the first piece of European soil, which is the tiny island of Lampedusa, only about 100 miles off the coast of North Africa, but nonetheless a part of Italy and therefore a part of Europe. And at that time, the island was utterly overwhelmed by the number of people who were arriving. And so the Protestant churches in Italy felt that it was a watershed moment, a moment where we really had to be in solidarity with a community that was struggling, and also there for the people who were arriving. And to this day, we still have a team based on Lampedusa. However, the project has grown arms and legs since that time, and in particular is now best known probably in Italy for the work that it does in the sphere of what we call safe passage, bringing people safely to Europe with the benefit of a humanitarian visa from countries where they are in danger. I think when I first started working with the Federation, I had, to some extent, assumed that I might have a bit of a frontline role, but the reality is that my skill set is completely different. Before I became a mission co-worker, I was a lawyer working in the UK, and others were better than I was at perceiving that the skills that I had grown through the period of 20 years in private practice would be put to better use if I stayed behind a desk. And so I get involved in advocacy work on behalf of our organisation on a national level, on a European level, and on an international level. What we are aiming to do is to shape, to influence migration policy for the better. And this organisation has something really special to offer, because in 2015, along with the Comunità di Sant'Egidio, which is a Catholic organisation, the Federation pioneered something that we call humanitarian corridors. It's a very special example of a complementary pathway that is a legal pathway which sits alongside resettlement, which brings people safely and legally to Italy. At the time, it was brand new. It had never been tried in Italy. And it was a model that involves government who grant the visas, which enable people to come here, and involves civil society, faith-based organisations, and also secular members of the community too, in hosting and supporting participants in the scheme. It's a model that was begun as a pilot in 2015. The Italian government was willing to allow us to have the use of 1,000 humanitarian visas over the period of 2 years to bring people who were stuck in refugee camps in Lebanon, in the Middle East, to bring them to Italy, where they would be supported by our organisations, ourselves and Sant'Egidio, to integrate into Italian society. And so the first stage is making sure that these people are appropriate for the programme. There's no shortage of candidates, as you can imagine. All of the people who are eligible meet the criteria for refugee in the standard Geneva Convention of 1951, and in addition are particularly vulnerable for one reason or another, either because of their age or their medical situation or something to do with their personal circumstances. And so our team on the ground in Lebanon looks at all the potential candidates for the programme and has to go through the difficult job of working out whose needs are greatest and who might be best suited. Because it's also important that these are people who are able to settle here well, who are truly dedicated to committing to becoming part of Italian society. We don't just see this as a springboard to go somewhere else. And so the government will look at our list of recommendations, screen people in advance to be comfortable that there are no security risks associated with people coming, and then they come on commercial flights to Italy, bringing their luggage, in contrast to the people who arrive on these unfit boats that cross the Mediterranean Sea. We will have taken time to prepare them for what lies ahead. Our own team on the ground gives them orientation sessions, and a team of psychotherapists are also involved in helping people to understand what may lie ahead, to have coping strategies for the trauma that they've suffered and the trauma that they may face in adjusting to a completely different culture. And when they get here, we accommodate them for a period of around 18 months. We get them into school if they're of that age. We help them into work if they're of that age. We help them to learn the language because it's so fundamental to integrating. And we are there to accompany them in every aspect of their integration into Italian society. For us, it's a success when people leave the programme, ironically. We want to get people to a position where they're able to survive for themselves. And that's not straightforward because people not only have the challenge of integrating, but come with all of the trauma that they have suffered in the first place, whatever it is that has made them into a refugee. And all of that needs to be grappled with once they get here. That long-winded explanation of the Humanitarian Corridors programme is something that I wanted to share with you because it's something that we are able to talk about on the world stage as an example of best practice. We would like to encourage other countries to get involved in schemes like this if they aren't already. And indeed, some of the work that we are doing is about expanding those pathways and the network of complementary pathways across Europe and across the globe. So it's not just that we have ideas about how migration policy could be improved, but we also have a bit of experience and can offer our own example of what works to inform the global conversation about how we might move forward. It's a great privilege to be involved in the joint advocacy effort, both at a European and a global level. We are regularly invited to discussions in working groups within the European institutions, within UNHCR, and we are learning from each other as a community, as a civil society community. It's a really important piece of work, and it's a real privilege to be part of that. There's something humbling for me in realizing that we all have a role to play in something much bigger. And I think I had tended to say to myself that the skills I had potentially couldn't be used in other ways. I had a real sense of God calling me to do something else with my talents, but not being sure about what that was. And it's, for me, just a most joyful thing to realize that we can be used in different ways for a better purpose. It's been important for me to understand that these conversations matter, that we are perhaps all small cogs in a big wheel, but all of the cogs are needed to make it work. And if we are able to share our experiences, if we are able to articulate them in a manner that's convincing and persuasive, then we can contribute to something that actually makes a big difference for a large number of people. And so advocacy work essentially is about relationships, it's about sharing, it's about talking. But my goodness, how important it can be when ultimately it can change a whole policy for hundreds, if not thousands of people. Advocacy work, I've realized, is something that really matters. I think one of the most useful things that we as faith-based communities can do is start to change the narrative about migrants and refugees and what they mean in the context of our own societies. I think there is an understandable tendency for us to think of migrants and refugees as people that we, the host societies, are helping, and therefore that they are the victims, that they are the people who are needing support. When in fact, it may be that they do need support to come and they do need support to settle, but in reality, They are people who can make a massive contribution to our societies and indeed do so. They are people who come with hopes and dreams and skills and qualifications just like you and me. And part of the work that we have to do is unlocking all of that potential and learning the extent to which we can be enriched by our coexistence. It's unfortunate that a lot of people don't see past this imperative to help and see that as a burden on the society that we live in, particularly when our own societies suffer economic difficulty, particularly when there are people without jobs, people who are struggling themselves. I think the challenge for us as communities of faith is to meet these people when they arrive, to give them opportunities to get to know our communities, to give them opportunities to become part of our communities so that we can all grow together.
We are in the Mediterranean and we are affected by massive numbers of migrants. Most of them arrive irregularly, crossing the Mediterranean and risking their life. The Mediterranean Sea is becoming one of the most important cemetery in the world. We have any year at least 3,000 people who die trying to cross the Mediterranean. In 10 years is more than 30,000 people. How to contrast this? How to create an alternative? We have been campaigning and implementing the humanitarian corridors. Is a legal way, is a safe passage, if you want, granting the possibility to migrants and asylum seekers to get a visa before entering in our country and to get access to the international protection. It's a policy we have been developing from 2015 with very good results. And I am very happy to say that just yesterday, 100 people arrived from Lebanon, and the day before yesterday, we subscribed another protocol with the Italian government for refugees from countries nearby Afghanistan. And in June, we adopted another protocol for refugees from Libya. So our congregations are dramatically involved to grant hospitality to these people, because we don't limit ourselves to grant the passage, so to say, the safe passage, but we offer a strategy of integration, a project of integration. This is part of our social work, but we think this is very theological. And we do think this is our way to witness and to preach God's love in Jesus. Thank you, dear sisters and brothers, for your constant support and prayers. And let's stay united in this circle of fraternity, Christian fraternity, to defend the rights of those who are persecuted and are forgotten. May God bless all of us and our ministries.